Welcome to Voice Rising with Kara Johnstad. Enjoy weekly conversations with leading luminaries, pioneering visionaries, singers, poets, musicians, and sound healers as we explore the profound role our voice plays on the path to self-realization and global enlightenment. The internationally acclaimed singer, composer, author, healer, recording artist, voice expert, creator of Voice Your Essence, and founder of the School of Voice, Kara Johnstad uses her extraordinary spiritual gifts to empower others. Everything in this world vibrates. Everything has a frequency. A pioneer in the field of voice work and transformational songwriting, her breakthrough methods are helping thousands of people worldwide fine-tune their body-mind-spirit system and unlock the energetic frequencies of limitless creativity, health, and abundance. Share your voice, ask your questions, join in the conversation. Receive life-changing, positive transformation and rise together to create a sound world. And here's your host, Kara Johnstad.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Today at Voice Rising, we're delving into the fascinating world of body-centered writing with renowned poet, Aikido practitioner, and Master Somatic Coach, Renée Gregorio. Renée has a rich background in poetry with 9 published books and numerous accolades to her name, including the prestigious New Mexico Book Award for Poetry, and as a teacher of body-centered writing workshops across the United States. Renée brings a unique perspective to the art of writing that integrates somatic practices and creativity. And today, I am very thrilled to explore with Renée her latest book, The Writer Who Inhabits Your Body, and discover how somatic practices can awaken our voice and enhance our creativity. Welcome, Renée, to Voice Rising.
Thank you, Kara. I'm so delighted to be with you today.
I'm so delighted to have you and be celebrating with you your new book. You have a lot of books out there, Renée, so it's good that you have a new one out there so that people can grab it. So first of all, congratulations. Your book starts off with something intriguing. Instead of diving straight into all those writing techniques like how to dot your I's and, capitalize in the right places and do the correct commas and semicolons, your book focuses on bringing heart, body, and soul into the writing process. So share with us a little bit about what sets your book apart from other writing books that are out there.
Yeah, sure. One of the things I think I said right at the beginning of the book is it's not a book on how to write. And that's true. It is really a book that combines the study, the work, the practices I've been in for many decades, beginning with being a poet. So I was a poet for probably 10 years or so before I started the practice of the martial art Aikido. It's a Japanese martial art. And pretty quickly, when I got onto the Aikido mats, I started making connections. And it took me, that was 3 decades ago. And it took me a while to really keep digging into the connections between what I was feeling on the Aikido mats in terms of self-transformation and energy and movement and life force and all those great things that I would then sit at my writing desk and say, okay, there's a lot going on here that's related. I'm faced with a blank page, faced with how do I quiet what's inside myself and feel what's beyond me and get that down on the page. So it's a lot more about, this book is a lot more about the energetic aspects of being a writer, being human, and I also moved into a pretty deep study of the field of somatics. And the teacher I had is an Aikido sensei. So he was bringing in a lot of Aikido principles to his teaching. And so I began to just blend those three arenas. And that's what this book represents, really.
Yeah, I love that. You say in the book, I mean, anybody who's done martial arts knows this feeling of going to the dojo and arriving at the mat. I guess you could say the same thing for a yoga practice. You know, when we arrive at the mat every day, and a writer would probably say the same thing, that we arrive at the page, right? And it's a practice. It's a daily practice of showing up. And I had a very short stint with Aikido, so definitely not as long as you. But what I remember is this idea of how can I receive the other person's energy. That's what I remember. It's like you don't go into it and try to, how do I say, it's using what comes towards us and then transforming it into the next thing. Am I right? And that's very powerful because it has more to do with how do I receive and use that force. And the same thing I think with in writing or also with singing or speaking, less of I need to produce and push, and more is how can I be deeply listening and sensing what's happening, right? So that so that's
I think that so much of writing is that place that you're speaking of deep listening. And that it's, I think I wrote something in the book like writing isn't really recording what we know, but it's finding ways to hear what we don't know and getting that down on paper, right? And then that way, right on the Aikido mats, as you were saying, Kara, it's like, what happens to me when somebody grabs my wrist? You know, what happens to my whole system, right? And maybe I fight. Maybe I use my bicep a lot. And maybe I clench, you know, and you start to learn through the body, learn how to change that and how that doesn't work on the Aikido mat and how to begin to soften, begin to let energy move through you. And the parallels between that and being faced, say, with a writing topic that is, that makes you do all those things, clench and tighten and have fear, you know. So I talk a lot about those places where we can tend to shut down or we can tend to be challenged, and how to change that. Just like on the Aikido mat, you're changing what could be regarded as an attack, in quotes, to neutralizing that, to a peaceful solution to that, in a sense. So,
what do you mean when you talk about in your book, you talk about embodying language? So what is the difference for you as someone just simply sitting and writing and putting it out there, or really embodying the story, embodying language?
Yeah. You know, sometimes where I feel that sense most is, and you'll get this, I know, is when I read my work. And so, you know, what you've done, I mean, of course you have to feel it as you're making it. To feel, I think what I mean by that is to feel that you're clear, like you're a vessel and you're clear. And whatever you need to do to clear that vessel so that language can find its way to you and through you. That's what I mean by embodying. And then when I notice, especially as I've moved through my path with poetry, when I read my work, I can feel the words literally, in myself. I can feel the language moving through me in a way that I didn't have access to before. And I think it's right. I think it's because the original source was that, sit down at the desk, do whatever you do beforehand to clear yourself and contact what's beyond you, contact how language wants to come through you. I don't know how else to say it. And get that down on paper. And then when you read it, you go back to that original emotion, that you put down on the page to begin with. And
You talk about a concept. I mean, obviously Aikido is a Japanese practice, but you also talk about a great concept coming from the Japanese tradition, which is called hara-ge, or the art of living through the belly, which I love. This idea that we can drop into our deep breath, that we can, maybe you want to explain to people who don't know where the hara is, but the art of living through the belly, and what would happen if we all started thinking with our bellies and speaking with our belly voices and dropping out of this mental, logical, analytical place and start feeling from another, sense. What is your experience with that? And explain to our listeners a little bit more about this hara-ge. I thought it was a wonderful place to remember.
Yeah, it's so powerful. I mean, first of all, the hara is, it's really the physical center of our body. So imagine maybe a couple inches below your belly button and in a bit, and that is the physical center, but it's so much more than that. So, for example, in Aikido training, that was the first place that any teacher I had, any of my senseis would say, you have to move from hara. You have to drop, you have to drop your attention into hara, and just practice doing that. It's not, at the time, I really was awkward, like, how do I move from my hara? I had a sensei say, drive from your hara, make love from your hara, do everything, cook meals from your hara. And you start to, like you were saying, you get out of your head. We're so overly geared to use our wonderful minds, but they can also get us into trouble. So it's like, what if I drop into this belly center? And what is that asking of me? It's like, to me, it's saying, I want to feel through this rather than think through this. Feel into this, right? Whatever this is. And then hara-ge, the art of the belly, I mean, the Japanese have taken it to this whole other level, which is really developing, it's almost like that sixth sense of I know you by dropping into and feeling across time and space, to you in Berlin, right? And I'm feeling, right, through my belly, feeling, who is this person and how do I connect with her? And, and we do that we can do that all the time. And it's such a trustworthy place, it's a place, it's a different intelligence, I believe, and a different way to connect.
Well, we do know now more and more that our belly has its own brain. There's more importance on the bionome than ever before, that we even say that there's a gut instinct. You know, when we meet somebody, we have this gut instinct, and then our head says, yeah, but he's actually a very nice, successful person, and our gut is like, run away, right? And so I think, and we have a gut instinct also of, oh, this thing is calling me to write. And yet we're like, yeah, that's the most illogical thing possible. Why am I writing about a zebra ride? Somebody who rides zebras with, I don't know, like a, princess meeting a monster or something. We have these very strange senses that often guide us where we need to be, and yet we don't trust them. So how or do you have any tips, I guess, for writers out there that are struggling to find their authentic inner voice and trust their gut instinct and trust their deeper belly belly love? How can they come back to breathing and living from that Hara center?
Well, this is, I really think that, and I talk about this a lot in my book, and the way the book is structured too is each chapter presents a topic and then moves along through that topic and into a practice. And it might be a somatic practice, a writing practice, a combination of both. But what I think is, to answer your question here, is that practice is essential, right? So, so the whole like when I said I was awkward when I first tried to feel, where is my Hara? What is it? How do I contact it? Well, I contact it by just beginning to shift my awareness, for starters, right? That I have a Hara. That I can walk across a room. I think one of the early practices in my book is just that. Walk across a space and just walk the way you usually walk, right? And then come back to the beginning, and now contact your Hara, maybe put your hand on your Hara, and walk across that same space, moving from your Hara. Now, and then being curious, what difference did it make to walk the way I normally walk versus move from my Hara? What did I notice? What does it take for me to breathe from there and move from there that's different from my sort of normal way of being in the world? So I think it's really a matter of practice and continuing practice. So I will say, just for my own immediate experience today, to get ready to speak with you, I did a yoga practice. I mean, I do that anyway. It wasn't just to speak to you, but to, clear and move and contact what's inside myself and all of that. And then I went outdoors and I did 2 practices from the Aikido learning and practices when I was doing Aikido all the time. They call them weapons. I don't really like that word, but there's a wooden sword and a wooden staff, and I do different kata or form with those. And so there's a way, I mean, I can speak to any of this in terms of what difference it makes, but those practices I do so that I can extend an intention. What would I like to happen when Kara and I talk, for example? What would I like to happen when I sit at my desk today? What's my intention for this 2 hours of writing or whatever it might be? So really dropping into our body can really help to inform those processes.
There's a lot of writers that used to walk in the woods with a notepad. Do you also find yourself walking and gathering ideas, or do you stand at a desk and write, or are you lying on your belly in your dojo, writing on the ground like we used to write as kids? Huh?
I like those two ideas, and I don't do those. Lying on my belly. I'm going to try that.
Well, I was thinking, as kids, we do that, right? We're lying on the ground on our belly. That's how we draw and write a lot as when we're young.
I know. Isn't
that funny?
More, right. It's so much more about, we knew about direct contact, right, with the earth or with experience, so more direct. And I think then we get older, and it's like, how do I keep having that direct experience? And that is, I think, part of why I was so thrilled with Aikido and the learning there, but also with this continued practices, somatic practices that bring me in touch with the part of myself that, I might not have even known was alive in me, And I think that's another similarity with being at a desk and writing. And I mean, the way that I work is generally I write I keep a daily journal, but I write in notebooks, and I gather stuff, and if I get an idea for a poem that I want to follow, I dive into that, and I pull from different sources as I work. I keep travel journals. I tend to get more ideas when I'm driving, unfortunately, than when I'm walking.
That's your American lifestyle. I'm in Europe, I walk, and you're in America, you drive. That's how that's different cultures. Exactly. Yeah. You're like the hunter gatherer in a way. You're out there gathering all these little threads, or you're a weaver. Weaving things, and gathering threads, and then weaving it together into beautiful poetry. Yeah, I mean.
It is that kind of a process. It really is, and you just follow what. The number of times I will open, a notebook where I keep all this gathering, and I'll look at a line or two lines or a paragraph, and I'll go, "That's where I'm going today." That's it. But that comes from instinct. I think that comes from intuition and instinct to go, that's where I'm headed. That's what matters to me, right? That's the belly, right? It might be the belly. I'm not sure. Or I like to say, sometimes I do like to say, people ask me, should I follow my head or should I follow my heart? And I do like to say, follow your voice, because the voice is integrating constantly our emotional fields and maybe the belly fields too. The voice is located, above the body. Above the core of the body, and below, of course, our mental concentration and focus. And so it's a beautiful place to remember that our voice is a guide if we're going to follow the intuition and the inspiration, right? It's a guide. Yeah, it's a beautiful guide. Exactly. I love that. Yeah, and there's often so much energy between our heart and belly centers. I know, often I'll working with people, I'll often have them do that. Just put a hand on their heart center, their belly center, and see what's happening between there. Between your hands, and how energy is moving or not moving, and I like adding in, like you're saying, the voice, of course, right? Where does our voice come from? That's a whole question. I can feel my whole body light up when I ask that question.
And I was just thinking about you driving in the car and thinking of the root chakra and the route that we're taking. But that's me loving to play with sound. It's like I used to live on Route 2 in Blair, Wisconsin, and I was thinking, oh, you're probably close to Route 66 and the root chakra. Why do we find similarities with sound, that we have the root, the core of our body, and our roots, our legs, our belly, and at the same time, if we're on the path, if we're on the journey, we're taking that route. Right? Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
That's sometimes these synchronicities or these play on words or sounds, they only arrive in the reflection when you're having a conversation with another person. And that's what's so precious about meeting strangers, right? We're always these kind of beautiful openings. So we're going to take a brief pause, Renée, and we're going to take a brief pause for our sponsors, and we're going to come back then and dive deeper into your book. So for everybody out there, stay tuned.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free, ascendinghearts.com.
With happy clients all over the world, Kara Johnstad knows that your voice is the missing link to more authenticity, abundance, creativity, and health. An internationally acclaimed voice expert, Kara's breakthrough methods have helped thousands of people successfully heal their voice wounds and extinguish the story of self-doubt and shyness forever. Join in group trainings, attend online sessions, schedule one-on-one time, and invite Kara to work with your organization and community. Get started today. Go to www.karajohnstad.com and receive a special guided meditation designed to fine-tune your inner voice and welcome you on the voice journey.
This is Kathy Beal, host of Celestial Compass, featuring astrology you can use. Celestial Compass points you to what's going on in the sky and what you can do with it down here on Earth. We also explore fun, effective, and cosmic tools for navigating this adventure we call life. Join me the first and third Monday of the month at 5 p.m. Eastern Time for Celestial Compass. It's enlightening, entertaining, and empowering.
Host your show on IOM-FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM-FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
You came across someone struggling with hunger. How would you recognize them? Would you notice an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for
summer break because she may not be having lunch again until September?
Or a war veteran who's having a hard time landing
a job and getting back on his feet?
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. I am hunger in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org, brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Voice Rising. If you're enjoying our conversation today, don't forget to subscribe to Voice Rising on OMTimes Radio at any of your preferred streaming platforms, and then you will never miss an episode, and you'll get lots of wonderful interviews on how we can transform this world through the power of voice. And so now I welcome back Renée to the show to talk more about your new book.
Great. Hi, Kara.
Hi, Renée. Yeah, it's good to have you. Renée, you talk a little bit in your book about fear and doubt and the difficult emotions that we can face as writers that can hinder the writing process. So how can somatic practices help when we're struggling, like literally struggling with writer's block? Or you talked a little bit about this at the beginning of the hour where you were talking about, on the mat maybe dealing with that clenched fist or whatever. But for those people that haven't practiced Aikido or haven't done somatic work, how can they work with these tensions that arise while they're trying to write their poem?
Right. Well, I mean, what I advocate in this book and what I think is really important is to face into rather than avoid, so like looking at fear. We all have fears, but the more that you just sort of say, okay, I'm afraid I'm just going to put that aside and I'm going to write, It doesn't really work to do that. So, I think that what we can do instead is to, and I take people through this process in that chapter, which is say, okay, what are my fears? I'm gonna list them. I'm just gonna say, I'm afraid of speaking in public. I'm afraid that if I write this down, I'm gonna hurt so-and-so's feelings. I'm afraid that whatever it is, there's so many possibilities, right? And get them all down, get them out. And then, where a somatic practice could help here is that you could then say, okay, here are my fears. I see them now. They're not inside me. They're on this piece of paper in front of me. Maybe I'll read them out loud. I'll read each one and I'll see how I feel. What does it make me feel to name this fear? And to turn literally, name the fear and imagine it, say, outside of yourself, and imagine that you're turning and fully facing it and letting the energy of that fear touch you and letting yourself then, the book takes you through a process of centering and a process of contacting, sort of more of yourself and that full energetic aspect of yourself, so that you do that practice for a while and then you know what it means in your body to, all right, I'm coming fully into my center and I'm going to turn and face that fear. And I'm going to let it inform me. And I'm going to almost even have a dialogue with it, or something where it's not just this dark hidden thing inside you that is running the show. It's something that you can name, become more aware of, place in relationship to yourself, and have a dialogue or a, actual dialogue or just an energetic dialogue. What am I feeling here? And does that even make sense? Or what could I say back to that fear that might bring it more into, a place of, is this even real anymore?
And then hopefully have the technique of grabbing it by the arm and flipping it on its back.
Of course, that's required, Kara.
I remember that happened to me when I was a young girl. My brother, who is a writer, actually a screenwriter, and studies Aikido. He was at the very, very beginning of his studies and said, I want to show you something I learned today in class. And he literally, within a nanosecond, had me on my back. So I would hope if we're in a moment of struggle with our writing that we could be as adept as some martial artists out there.
I wish. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The thing about doubt, too, which is a place that we go, I'm sure most of us do at some point. So I talk about, I was thinking about doubt a lot, and I thought, well, so I think there's more than one kind of doubt, right? There's the self-doubt that we have where we're really, it's existential, and we can even doubt, our own existence, or we can doubt our ability, or I'm not a writer, I am a writer, who am I? We have all those doubts. But then I was thinking, well, but sometimes doubt is can serve as an ally. And so I named that kind of doubt creative doubt, where you're not doubting yourself. You've written a poem, a story, whatever. You've written something, and you have some distance from it, and you go back and you read it, and you apply this creative doubt to it, which is more like a laser beam. You go, okay, what's here that makes this piece sing? What doesn't? So you're bringing your critical abilities in a way that you're not doubting yourself, but you're clarifying what, your first draft or your second draft.
I find that always the hardest moment. I have to say, I do a lot of writing, but I find personally, most people that I know, they find it more difficult to go into stream of consciousness, and they find it easier to start correcting, and they know that they need to be in that first place. I'm actually someone who loves deep flow. I could write for hours in this oceanic feeling of stream of consciousness. And then when we start editing, it's like, oh, I could go there. Oh, I could cut that out. And then I could add that. And then, oh, wow, I could move that up. And then suddenly I'm in this next stream of flow, and I'm moving and shifting and correcting. And I'm just in the next flow. Right? And I find it really hard to choose to cut words or cut things. And I don't know, it's just so beautiful to watch the river. And so I find I have a lot of respect for great editors, because that can keep the original tone and not make it into an academic paper, but keep that poetic tone and still bring that clarity in. I think that is a really wonderful quality, right? How do you do with those two processes? Are they equal for you?
It's I love the way you described your process. All that flow. I mean, it's like you're lucky, I think.
Yeah.
I worked as an editor before I was a poet, a technical editor, and I was an English major in school. So, that I had those qualities that I actually had to unlearn when I started following the poetry path, right? It's like, I can't bring the editor is in the way. If I'm trying to write a poem from the editor, no, that doesn't work. So I really had to quiet that part of myself. So that was my journey. It was like, okay, move the editor aside, and let the poet in, whoever that is. When you first start writing, you're not even sure what that means. But yes. And I have a strong editor, and I had to unlearn but then be able to bring her back in, right?
Nice.
Later.
Yeah.
In the
nice.
process.
Yeah. So you also talk about, which I love, the writing dojo. So give us some insights. Not everybody has a room that they can dedicate, and at the same time, how precious it is to, you also talk a little bit about the beauty or the ritual of arriving at the writing dojo, whether that is a desk in a corner or a room or the kitchen table, and just creating I bow, or I leave my shoes on the outside, or, I honor this process. And then at the end of the writing, also kind of closing that session. So share with us a little bit, how do you do it, and what are some ideas that other writers can get to ritualize a little bit their writing and also create a writing dojo?
Yeah. There's so the whole dojo idea, dojo as a martial arts dojo being a place of awakening, a place of learning, and I always the qualities of that space as sacred space, and literally getting to the dojo in say the close of the day, your work clothes or whatever that meant, crossing that threshold, changing into another outfit, that all these things really, I think, help to define that space of the martial arts dojo, and you're giving it a credence that we don't tend to do for most spaces. And so I was thinking that, why can't we do that with our writing space? So whether it's you have a room and you can cross the threshold into that room, or I always remember one of my teachers saying that his sensei went over to him one day on the mat and touched my teacher's heart and said, "This is your dojo." So, right, that's so beautiful. It's like, okay, what does that mean? This is the space of your learning right now. This is the place where you need to awaken, perhaps, right? So a dojo, I started realizing, could really be anywhere. And so if you're at your kitchen table, make it be, have an intention. Make it be intentional. Make it have a definition. It could be in a cafe. I'm going to go. I don't tend to work well with a lot of noise around me, but I know writers who do. And they prefer that. So their dojo might be a cafe table, but the qualities to bring into that. And I like these two words for that came to me from the martial training, which is it's rigorous and it's compassionate. So always bringing rigor and compassion into your dojo. So you're both, I'm serious and I can have fun. I always love that about Aikido dojos. It felt very serious, but what a blast, And writing, it's challenging, right? But if we can define that space in whatever way works for us and cross over the literal threshold or the metaphorical threshold into, I have an hour and I'm going to work on this piece in front of me. And I'm going to allow what needs to happen. Whatever it is that you want to intend for that time and space, I really think declaring it and defining it helps something happen when you get there, when you cross the threshold.
When we cross the threshold, we have to think about that. Just the idea of the dojo, if we don't have, let's say we don't have a beautiful writing shed, right? But at the same time, we know that we're probably not hearing telephones ring or scrolling our emails or, I think there's a sacredness when, like you said, you get into another, everybody knows the beautiful, outfits. I am curious. Do you have a special writing outfit that you put on when you go to your desk?
Do you put on your... Good.
Do you put on your black belt and no? I was thinking about that.
But what an idea. You're giving me all kinds of ideas, Kara.
Well, I was thinking about that myself. I was thinking about what would happen. I actually do have some rituals. So I have a beautiful atelier where I have a beautiful grand piano, and I do always light a candle. So I have kind of ritualized when I walk into the room. I do have fresh flowers on an altar. I do have a candle lit. I do try to keep the space, clear from, let's say, I wouldn't just drop my socks. Let's say I pick them up, and, if I take off my socks, I probably walk them out of the room before I sit down. I try to keep that clear space, right? And I was just trying to think of those ways that we can, like you said, in a cafe, the people that I know that write in cafes, and I definitely am not a person who can write in a cafe, but I know that I used to be. So when I was maybe 20, it was very cool to go to a cafe and to leave the house, right? Now I'm happy not to be in the cafe and to be at home, right? So, but I was thinking a lot of times that people that I know, they have then the ritual, not of lighting candles, which is difficult in a cafe, but they have a certain coffee. They have a certain, they have the same cookie that they ritualistically stand in line, order the same kind of, it has to have a certain foam, or it has to have a certain feel. And then they sit down, and then they put their bag in a certain place, and they have a certain backpack, and they bring out the folder, and they have the pen. And so that also seems to work for them, and in a way they've ritualized it, and they're able to create their own little space. You wouldn't dare to sit down at the table when there's no other chair available in that cafe and disturb a writer who's clearly writing. I really have seen whole tables stay empty with the writer who's clear. This is my space, right? It's very fascinating. It's fascinating.
It is. And it's bringing back almost a memory that I can't fully pull in. But there is something about a writer, some famous writer, who liked the smell of rotting apples, and he or she used to have rotting apples in her desk drawer before, I wish I could remember who it was, but before they would write, they would open the drawer and smell the apples, and then they were okay.
Nice.
It's interesting.
We all have these conditionings, right? Some people need to sharpen the pencil and make sure it's sharp. Other people need felt pens because it needs to go fast. Other people, I know that I'm very sensitive with certain paper. Like, it's very hard for me to work with cheap paper or with pens that get stuck. Like, I don't like, the pen has to move, right?
Yes.
Renée, this book just came out into the market. I guess what would you love, we're talking today about voice, so what would you love people to take away from the book as far as the transformation that just becoming a writer gives them? And then, of course, where can they connect with you and, maybe study with you or be part of one of your workshops or retreats?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of what I would love people to come away with, it's really, I've had such a love of body-centered learning, and I hope that that can be conveyed to people in the book, that they would come at the practices with curiosity and fullness, that, because I think they can be very powerful, the learning that we can achieve through our body. And I would hope for full engagement with what I present in the book. And because I think it can really bring a couple things. One is a stronger sense of self-acceptance and self-awareness, and also a freedom of expression, a freedom of contacting that place in ourselves where we do, that voice, that authentic voice, can really rise, and shine through us. And I mean, powerfully. And I think that degree of freedom and of access to like the fullness of what we are is what I would hope, right? That's what I would hope. In terms of being in touch with me, I have a website that is my name. So it's RenéeGregorio.com. And there are poems, and my books are all on that site, and poems, and also some stuff about workshops I've done. And that's where I would put, I don't have a workshop specifically planned right now, but that's where I would put.
You probably have a newsletter that goes out once in a blue moon, like we all do somewhere.
Once in a blue moon, right? Once in a blue moon, right? I do.
We all say that we're going to write more of our newsletters, and then we end up forgetting and writing a poem instead, right? We're like, oh, I wanted to write the newsletter, but there's a poem that's calling me as I drive down the highway. Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, I definitely know that what I know from my own practice, and also the way I guide singers, is I do believe that to place an intent and the beauty of creating a writing space and really thinking of it as crossing a threshold, and then the beauty of dropping into our body and realizing that this is the vessel and it carries so much wisdom and so many stories. And I'm just always fascinated of all the issues in our tissues and how many stories. I always say, like we think where have our feet carried us, and I always say, and how many words have crossed your tongue? It blows my mind. And how many words have we already written on the page? How many love letters have already been read? And then how many notes have been left on the kitchen table? It's just, we are such beautiful beings of story. And I think that is what I take away from your book, is this love again for dropping into the belly. And if I could, I would, not hold the pen in between my pointer finger and my thumb, but I would probably put the end of it in my belly button and see if it would work, and lie on the ground, but writing and just come back to that place of innocence and inner sense, right? Innocence and inner sense. Exactly. So we're coming to a close. Beautiful Renée. A big thank you to you for sharing your wisdom and your insights, and blessing our world with poetry and with beauty, because I think beauty will save the world, if not poetry, I'm sure. We're gonna inspire each other through our stories and through our shared humanity. And I wish you much success. And for everybody else out there, feel free to share this episode with your friends. And if you want more about the writing journey, the OMTimes Radio also has archives, which a lot of people don't know about. But I have archives of these shows with Julia Cameron and Mark Nepo and Sharon Blackie and Mirabai Starr, and lots of writers that have shared their wisdom on what it means to be not only on the writing path, but on the voice path as we create a sound world full of vibrant laughter and well-being. Thank you so much again, and enjoy your success. All right.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much. Bye-bye.
Yeah, you're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.